The caste system in India is a really old and complicated way of dividing people into groups. It's based on who your family is, and it decides where you stand in society, what job you can have, and even who you can marry. At the very bottom are the Dalits, who used to be called untouchables. They've faced unfair treatment and been left out for centuries. This system has had a huge impact on India, shaping how people interact, who gets what resources, and what opportunities people have in life. It's all based on the idea of ritual purity, meaning the people at the top are seen as pure, while those at the bottom, the Dalits, are seen as impure. This creates a system where advantages and disadvantages are passed down through families, making it really hard to move up in society. And even though there are laws against it, the caste system is still a big problem in India today. It shows up in everything from small biases to outright discrimination, making it hard for India to be truly equal. Imagine being born a Dalit in India. It means starting life with a huge disadvantage. Dalits face discrimination in almost every part of life: getting an education, finding a job, having a place to live, even getting clean water. They often experience violence, abuse, and are left out of social gatherings. Their struggles show just how unequal Indian society can be. One clear example is where people live. Dalit communities are often forced to live in separate areas, far from where upper caste families live. These areas often lack basic things like good sanitation and healthcare. This separation reinforces the idea of untouchability and makes it hard for Dalits to escape poverty. Finding a good job is also really tough for Dalits. They're often stuck with dangerous or unpleasant jobs that upper caste Hindus consider impure. This makes it hard for them to get an education and better jobs, trapping them in poverty. Dalits are also often excluded from social events. They might be prevented from entering temples, eating with upper caste Hindus, or even getting water from the same well. This makes them feel isolated and like they don't belong. Even Dalit children experience discrimination in school, making it even harder for them to break free from poverty and discrimination. Yashika Dutt wrote a powerful book called Coming Out as Dalit. It's a very honest story about what it was like to grow up as a Dalit in India. Her story shows how sneaky caste can be. It even exists in places that seem modern and open-minded. For years, Yashika's family hid their Dalit background to avoid the shame and discrimination that came with it. She was always afraid of being discovered and tried hard to fit in with upper caste people. She did well in school and became a journalist, often pretending to be upper caste. But when a Dalit student tragically took his own life in 2016, it changed everything for Yashika. She realized she had been benefiting from the system without even knowing it. In 2017, Yashika bravely shared her story on Facebook, revealing that she was Dalit. This inspired many people in India and around the world to talk about caste. Her story reminds us that caste isn't just something from the past. It's a daily reality for millions of people. While some people criticized her, Yashika's bravery encouraged others to share their stories and brought the issue of caste into the spotlight. Now she works to teach people about caste, challenge unfair beliefs, and fight for Dalit rights. The fight against caste discrimination in India has been a long and difficult one. Many brave people have worked hard to change things. One of the most important leaders was Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He was a Dalit scholar, lawyer, and the main writer of India's constitution. Dr. Ambedkar spent his life fighting against the caste system. He faced a lot of discrimination, from being kept out of school to being treated like an outcast, but he never gave up, and he even earned a doctorate from Columbia University. Dr. Ambedkar led huge protests for Dalit rights, demanding equal access to public places, education, and jobs. He made sure the Indian constitution banned untouchability and promised equality for everyone. Later, the Dalit Panther movement, inspired by the Black Panther Party in America, took a stronger stand against caste violence and oppression. They encouraged young Dalits to fight for their rights and brought attention to the violence Dalits faced. Sadly, caste discrimination isn't just a problem in India. It has spread to Indian communities around the world, including in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada. This discrimination can take many forms, from being left out of social groups to facing bias when looking for a home or a job. Even simple questions like, "What's your last name?" can be a sneaky way of figuring out someone's caste. People often avoid talking about caste in these communities, worried it will make them look bad, but ignoring the problem only makes it worse. Thankfully, many organizations and activists are working hard to raise awareness about caste discrimination abroad. They are pushing for Dalits to be included and represented in community events and are advocating for laws to protect them from this hidden form of prejudice. The fight for caste equality is a global one, and it needs everyone to work together. To try and fix the historical injustices faced by Dalits and other marginalized groups, India created a system called reservations. This system sets aside a certain number of spots in schools, government jobs, and even political positions for these communities. Reservations are a very controversial topic. Some people say they are necessary to create a level playing field and give opportunities to those who have been historically disadvantaged. They argue that it's not about handouts, but about fairness. Others say reservations are unfair to upper caste communities and create more division. They believe it goes against the idea of everyone being equal. The debate about reservations is complicated and shows the deep divisions that still exist in Indian society. While there are criticisms, reservations have helped improve the lives of many Dalits and other marginalized groups, giving them access to education and jobs they wouldn't have had otherwise. However, it's important to see reservations as a temporary fix, not a permanent solution. The caste system in India and racial discrimination in the United States, while different in many ways, share some striking similarities. Both systems create a social hierarchy based on who you are born to, limiting a person's chances in life. Both also rely on the idea that some groups are naturally better than others. In her book Caste, Isabel Wilkerson compares the caste system to racial hierarchy. She argues that both are based on made-up ideas about human differences used to justify treating people unfairly. Comparing caste and race shows how common prejudice and discrimination are around the world. It reminds us that we need to fight against inequality everywhere, no matter what form it takes. Learning about these shared histories can help us understand and support each other in the fight for justice and equality. It's important to remember that while caste and race are similar, they are not exactly the same. Each has its own history and consequences, but comparing them can help us understand how prejudice works and inspire us to fight against all forms of oppression. Even with laws protecting equality and years of activism, the fight for caste equality in India is still very difficult. Caste discrimination continues to affect many parts of Indian society. Dalits and other lower caste communities still face violence, exclusion, and systemic disadvantage. One of the biggest problems is that many people, especially those from upper castes, don't believe caste discrimination is still a big issue. They think talking about it only creates more division. Another problem is the lack of action from the government to address caste-based violence. Even though there are laws against it, they are not always enforced. The police and courts are sometimes accused of being biased against Dalits, making things even worse. The fight for caste equality needs a multifaceted approach. It requires addressing the root causes of caste prejudice, such as poverty, lack of education, and social exclusion. It also requires stronger laws, better enforcement, and promoting inclusion and harmony. Creating a caste-free India is a long and challenging journey. Everyone in society needs to work together to dismantle this deeply rooted system of oppression. It requires a fundamental change in how people think, believe, and act. We need to acknowledge the painful history of caste and work towards a more just and fair society. Education is key. By teaching children about the history of caste, the harm it has caused, and the importance of equality and respect, we can create real change. We must also listen to and support Dalit activists and scholars who have been fighting against the caste system. Their experiences and knowledge are essential. The fight for caste equity isn't just about fixing the past. It's about building a future where everyone, regardless of their caste, has the chance to live a good life with dignity and respect. It's about creating a society where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed.